Have you ever been browsing a catalog and you see these little advertisements for Stauer watches where you can buy them for $259 or 4 easy payments of like $79 or however they sell them on there? Well, this is a Stauer watch. It's not really the quality that you would expect. It is an Oriental movement. It's one of these cheaper Oriental movements. This one took a drop, but of course the customer says it didn't drop. We're going to go through and find out what's going on in here, and I don't know if you've noticed it already, but I already see what the problem is. So maybe you spotted it, maybe not, but these inexpensive movements really don't have the quality of screws or build quality in them. And you can see that obviously this watch was dropped and a screw popped right out of its setting. So we just have to find that location where it came from. It looks like just one screw in this case. I didn't find anything else, but we went in there and poked around and prodded for debris. So I'm going to just examine the whole movement a little bit at a time, just to make sure that I can find anything that might be wrong with this watch. So what I like to do first is just adjust the weight and see if it's winding the system. Of course, this one's not. There's an issue with it. So we're going to take off the winding rotor and check out the movement and see what's going on inside. So here you can see this is where the screw came out of the watch movement, and that's one of two screws, only two screws that hold that entire 3/4 plate bridge on, and that holds the winding and the train system all in place. So there's 7 gears that are held in place by this one plate, and unfortunately if it pops off of one side, several of those gears are going to get loose and pop out of their pinions. In this case, this is a jewel movement, so we have to be very cautious as not to poke or prod the jewels. I also checked for damage to the jewels under the microscope, and I didn't find anything. So you can see the watch is not running. That is definitely an indication that the gears are out of position. I'm just, again, going through the whole movement, just trying to find out exactly what's wrong. So I'm using a little bit of pressure to hold down that bridge, and I'm trying to line up the gears into their jeweled pinions. And what I'm finding is it's a little difficult with this because it's just a little awkward to work with, 7 gears in one bridge. So I'm going to put that screw back, and I'm not going to tighten it down all the way. I'm only going to tighten it about halfway so that it's in place and it is holding the movement basically together. Again, we're going to check those gears and see if they're lined up correctly. Again, I don't want to tighten this up until I make sure that all the gears are located in the proper places. Sometimes this is pretty easy. Other times with these less expensive watch movements, it can be a little complicated because, again, there's poor tolerances and it's just a little harder to work with. I'm going to remove the movement holder, and it's a good time in this case because I'm going to be poking and prodding around in there looking through the microscope. I want to remove the balance right off the watch movement so that I don't do any damage to it. Move that screw, and then we'll just lift out the balance. Be careful. These don't take a lot of abuse. Now I'm just checking the pallet fork to make sure there's no damage there. And again, I'm just going to line up these gears and see if they're in place or not. And again, they're not. So again, we don't want to put any pressure on any of these gears because it can cause problems with the jewels. We could crack one. So I'm going to gently poke and prod until I get all the gears to line up into their correct position. Once I get everything situated in its correct placement, I'm going to test everything, make sure that there's an up and down movement so that everything seats. Give that crown a little turn and make sure that the winding system's working good. And it is now. And then we'll tighten up the screw. Now it's a good time when you've got the watch in this amount of disassembly just to go through and check all the screws and make sure that everything is nice and tight. You don't want to over tighten them. However, these screws are delicate and they will break. Once I've got everything back into place, the gears are all fine, we can go ahead and put the balance back in. And our magical moment here. If everything goes well, bam, the watch is working and it'll take off on its own. If the watch movement is in relatively good shape, that balance should just kind of start working on its own. I'll take the bridge screw there for the balance cock and we'll tighten that down very carefully. Again, you don't want to put any pressure on that because you don't want to break a balance jewel, so you want to make sure everything's lined up correctly when you do this. So the watch is working. I'm going to put the insert back in. This is the movement holder. It's a plastic insert that holds it in position so it doesn't wobble around. And I'll use a little bit of Rotor. It's kind of like Play-Doh, and we'll just kind of wipe off some of that debris. I'll go through and clean this up a little bit better later. Before I get to putting the watch back together permanently, I also want to attach the rotor system and do a test. These rotors on these inexpensive Asian movements are keyed typically. Sometimes they're not. So just look for a key mark. If it's got like an indentation in it and it only fits in one way, you'll see it. Tighten that screw up, but not too tight. Again, you could break those blue steel screws. They are very delicate. Again, we're just going to gently wind the rotor and make sure that the winding system works. Once that's done, I'm going to throw this face down into the watch timer, and then we're going to check it for timing. You can see here that it is approximately 129 seconds off, and it's running fast. Now that could have been just, factory settings. I don't know what kind of condition these watches typically come in at. I don't know too many people who have bought these out of those catalogs. Now I've got that watch movement face up, and I'm testing it here. You can see we're still at about 130 some seconds off, so it's a good time to go in there and start adjusting the speed of the watch. Now this watch doesn't have much of a speed adjustment. I mean, if I move this thing 1/100th of a millimeter, it goes up and down in speed. I really can't tweak it any better because there's no micro adjustment on these. Again, these are very inexpensive movements, and the watch is really just a stylish watch. It's not, something that was made to run perfectly. If it was, it would have been built better. Now here you can see I've got it down to about 8 seconds. It's going to get better over time. I'm going to let this run for a while. Overall, I managed to get this watch to run about plus or minus 4 seconds. And I think on a watch of this quality, that's pretty good, especially with having a drop at some point, not finding much in damage except for that screw popping out. With all that done, it's time to put the watch together. And again, we're going to let it run and just make sure that it keeps pretty accurate time. It's never going to be perfectly accurate, and I think, anytime you have an older watch, just keep in mind mechanical watches do wear down. They're like anything mechanical. It's a good time to set the time, and I'm going to let this run for a few hours and just make sure that it's keeping pretty accurate time. These Stauer watches, again, they're fashion pieces. They're not waterproof. They are water resistant. I would not swim with it. I would not take a shower with it. I wouldn't go diving with it. I don't care what the catalogs say. Just remember, these watches are very inexpensive, lower quality, but high stylish movements and cases. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing and check out my other videos when you get a chance. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.